Join ForumIAS Academy, trusted by hundreds of toppers, including IAS Rank 1 𝐂𝐡𝐚𝐬𝐫𝐢𝐻𝐻.
Hello and welcome to ForumIAS. Today is 10th September 2023 and these are all the articles that we are going to see today. The first article is about the Global Biofuels Alliance, which was launched in the sidelines of the G20. What is it? We will see. So, the Global Biofuels Alliance was launched by Prime Minister Modi, and the plea of this particular alliance to take blending of ethanol with petrol to 20% globally. Already India has an ethanol blending program and they want to take this agenda globally, and for that purpose this Global Biofuels Alliance has been formed. Who are all the initiating members? They are Argentina, Bangladesh, Brazil, Italy, Mauritius, South Africa and UAE. US, Canada, Singapore are observer countries. So why this Global Biofuels Alliance has been launched? Because in the field of fuel blending, all countries should work together. So we already saw that the aim is to take ethanol blending of petrol to up to 20%. So we need energy transition. What is energy transition? Moving from non-renewable sources to renewable sources. So in this case, if we are blending petrol with ethanol, we are reducing demand for petroleum. That is, we are reducing demand for a non-renewable source of energy. Why this is important? Because of climate change, we should move towards more efficient and more replenishable sources of energy. That is why energy transition is important. And for this energy transition to happen in an inclusive manner, trillions of dollars are required. And this funding can be channeled by developed countries. So, developed countries, they have also expressed their willingness to contribute 100 billion for climate finance for the first time. So, this particular alliance is focused on supply of biofuels, and these biofuels should remain affordable, and these biofuels are produced sustainably. So, typically how the biofuels are produced? They are produced by fermenting sugarcane molasses. There are also other ways of producing biofuels. There are also algal biofuels. You can also produce biofuels from food grains, but it is not sustainable. So that is why they will be focusing on supply of biofuels, but it should also be produced sustainably. At the same time, it should remain affordable. Then only inclusive energy transition will take place. And this agenda will be taken forward by the Global Biofuels Alliance. The next article is about Rudra Veena artist Ustad 𝐂𝐡𝐚𝐧𝐧𝐞𝐥 passing away. Now we will see a little bit about Rudra Veena for the purpose of art and culture. Here you can see a picture of a man playing Rudra Veena. This is the Rudra Veena instrument. This lower portion is typically kept in the thigh or on the ground, and the upper portion, the upper drum, is rested on the shoulder. Okay, so this Rudra Veena is a stringed instrument and it is made of teak wood, metal, pumpkin and bamboo. So this instrument is majorly used in North Indian classical music. The word Veena, it came from the word Vana, and this Vana word is found in Rig Veda, and this Vana referred to a string instrument, and from that only Veena came. Specifically, the Rudra Veena was created by Lord Shiva as a tribute to the beauty of goddess Parvati. So, the first time this instrument was invented, it was played by Shiva himself, and at that time the Rudra Veena that was produced, it is said to have had spiritual powers. But this Rudra Veena, in the earliest form, it was considered too heavy for a woman's frail shoulders. Here you can see this heavy portion is rested on the shoulders. Earlier it was thought unsuitable for women. But in the modern era, there are few women players as well. The traditional posture to sit and play the Rudra Veena is the Vajrasan or the Darbari Baitak position, wherein the Veena is placed diagonally. The upper gourd, it rests on the left shoulder, and the lower gourd it rests on the right thigh, and the fingerboard is laid near the chest. This is actually, he is not sitting in Vajrasan, but this is a traditional pose. The way the lower gourd is rested, upper gourd is rested, and where the string is placed, it is traditional pose. Now modern days they have Sukhasana, wherein this lower gourd, it is placed on the ground and the upper gourd is placed on the right thigh, like how a typical Veena is held. So these are all the positions in which the Veena is played. For prelims purpose, they can ask what is the material with which it is made, and in statement based questions these statements can come. This has been lifted from the Indian Culture website of Government of India, which was called as the CCRT website previously. So this piece of information is important exclusively from prelims point of view. The next article is about Education Ministry integrating data under one platform. So where does this come from? There is something called as National Architecture Digital Education Architecture. So this is called as NDAR. NDAR is National Digital Education Architecture. So this NDAR, it comes under the Education Ministry. So in order to implement this National Digital Education Architecture, the Education Ministry has asked the states to open Vidya Samiksha Kendras. So what is this Vidya Samiksha Kendra? It is a data repository, and for that particular state, whatever the schemes that are coming under Education Ministry, the data about that will be there in the Vidya Samiksha Kendra. So what are all the schemes that are run by the Education Ministry? PM Poshan, which is the midday meal program, teacher training data from National Initiative for School Heads and Teachers Holistic Advancement Portal, textbook content from the Diksha portal. We have already discussed about the Diksha portal. Diksha portal is the digital infrastructure for knowledge sharing. So in this Diksha portal, educational content is there, the textbooks, digital lessons, videos, quizzes, etc. Then school dropout attendance related data on the Unified District Information System for Education, students learning outcomes data from the National Achievement Survey, which is conducted by NCERT, Performance Grading Index, which evaluates school education system at the state and union territory level. So all these schemes are being implemented by the Education Ministry. What each state will do is they will establish a Vidya Samiksha Kendra, which is VSK. And this Vidya Samiksha Kendra will have data about all these schemes that are being carried out and implemented in that particular state. So what will happen is there will be API, Application Program Interface. What is this API? API is the method through which two databases communicate. At the central level, we have the NDEAR. Right? This is there at the central level, and this database will communicate with VSK of states. There might be many VSKs, right? For each state there is a VSK, and this NDEAR will communicate with the VSK. So how does it communicate? It communicates using a technology called API, that is the Application Programming Interface. What this API does is, it will fetch information from the VSK to NDAR. From NDAR it can fetch information and take it to VSK. If the NDAR is asking for some data, that request is also carried out by the API. That is a very short explanation of what is API, but API in itself is a big topic which is not that much needed for this article. So I have explained in brief what is API. So what is the benefit of this integration is that multiple platforms at the center, state and district levels, they can communicate with each other using requests. So that is be possible through the API. And National Education Policy also laid down an objective which wanted an integrated database. And this data will be open source. Anybody can access this data and analyze this data. So why this is needed is because we want to do analytics for correlation. If we just have the raw data and we are not processing it and we are not obtaining any insights from this data, what is the use of having such a data, right? So currently we have data that caters to 15 lakh schools, 96 lakh teachers and 26 crore students. But if this data is not analyzed, what is the purpose of having such data? For example, in Gujarat, they have biometric attendance capture for students as well as teachers. So we have the data at the state level in the state of Gujarat. Now we can compare the attendance data with the student dropout data, and we can analyze the correlation between these two. Or we can analyze the midday meal scheme data and attendance data. What is the correlation between these two? That will be possible if there is an integrated database for the Education Ministry. That is it for this article. Next article is about e-waste management, and we want to bring about circular economy in e-waste management. What is circular economy? An article is produced, it goes into usage of public. Once it is used, it goes to landfill, it goes to waste. Instead of that, if we can repurpose it and it can be again consumed by the consumers, that is circular economy. We want to promote such a circular economy with respect to e-waste. How is that possible? We will see. First of all, why this news article is there? Because there was a recent report by the Indian Cellular and Electronics Association, and this report is on pathways to circular economy in Indian electronics sector. So this particular report follows an effort of NITI Aayog to explore opportunities to harness e-waste. So this report is saying that there is additional $7 billion market opportunity for harnessing e-waste, and we have to capitalize on that, not only because it is economically lucrative, it is also because it is good for the environment, it is good for sustainability. Presently, what is the e-waste management framework in India? Do we even have something called e-waste management in India? Yes, it is largely informal. 90% of collection and 70% of recycling, they are managed by very competitive informal sector. The Union government, they brought out e-waste management rules in 2022, and they wanted to digitize the process of e-waste management, and if we are able to digitize it, we can see in the digital database the movement of electronic waste that was mandated by the e-waste management rules, which are brought about by the central government. And It is expected that the level of e-waste will also grow because phones are getting cheaper and people are using more and more on the back of cheaper data plans. One thing, the device is also cheaper. Another thing, the way to use the device, the data packs are also getting cheaper. So there will be more demand for mobile phones, and as a result in the future, more and more e-waste can be generated. In this context, why is circular economy important? Because first of all, the electronic items, they are produced in a process which uses scarce elements, and it will also lead to high emissions. This is the reason why we want circular economy, because these are rare earth metals and they are exhaustible, right? The germanium, silicon, which are all used in manufacturing semiconductors, they are rare earth elements. That is why there needs to be more and more recycling, repurposing, circular economy that is needed in e-waste management. How can this be recycled? So there can be public-private partnership so that the cost is distributed between the public sector and the private sector. And if we can set up such public-private partnerships, we can create a reverse supply chain. That means we can repurpose the e-waste and we can use it as raw material for creating new devices. That is reverse supply chain. This is an important keyword. So what happens in this reverse supply chain is the devices are collected from users and the device is wiped clean of personal data, and then it is further passed on for processing and recycling. So in this report, it is also said that there should be an auditable database. So what and all materials are collected from these devices which are forwarded for processing, and this particular database will have data, that is a repository about what and all materials are salvaged from this process, and there should be geographical clusters where these devices come together and are broken apart. Like there are ship breaking clusters, there are food processing clusters. Similarly, this particular report suggests formation of e-waste management clusters where this e-waste is picked apart and salvageable materials are recovered. And in these clusters, there has to be database which shows what and all products, what and all part are retrieved from the discarded mobile phones. So another recommendation is to incentivize high yield recycling centers, because in a mobile phone there can be many parts that can be recycled, but not all recycling center will have the capacity to extract each and every part. If a particular center is able to extract more and more parts, which means they are salvaging more and more. Say for example, if we are recovering 50% of the material, then it is considered as success. So that is considered a high yield recycling center, and these kind of high yield recycling centers must be incentivized, because first of all it is very costly to set up a high yield recycling center. So IT Ministry, they also launched a plan, a scheme to cover 25% of capital expenditure for this high yield recycling center. So if we are supporting right to repair by users, many a times what happens, if the users are going to shop to get it repaired, most often the shop owners will say that this is not salvageable, you better buy a new phone. Instead of that, we have to promote repair culture, and that will also reduce the level of e-waste. But what are the challenges in this process? There are a lot of devices which are lying at consumers' homes. Why? Because we as people, we are scared of handing over these mobile sets to recyclers for scarcity and this anxiousness about personal data. It might be stolen, it might be misused. That is some that is causing some hesitation among the users in taking these phones for recycling. Also, capital requirement is huge. More than capital, we need material for salvaging these elements from discarded e-waste. That is also scarce. So first is attitudinal problem, second is capital problem, third is material problem. These are all the challenges in e-waste management. Let us see the final article of the day. It is about the ASEAN grouping. So why this is in news? Because on September 5th, the ASEAN summit was concluded in Jakarta, Indonesia, and in that 43rd summit, the Indonesian president, he said that the grouping had agreed to not be a proxy to any powers, in a veiled reference to growing competition between China and US to assert influence in the region. Right? So ASEAN is trying to assert themselves against power politics and trying to use ASEAN as a proxy by major powers like US and China. ASEAN as a grouping, they have two core operating principles. That is, one, non-interference in the internal affairs of its members, and two is consensual decision making. All the 10 members must agree to a decision, then only it will be taken forward. Also, ASEAN strives to achieve something called as centrality, which means ASEAN is in the driver's seat. If ASEAN wants to have relations with regional powers and global powers, ASEAN will be driving that relationship. Nobody can force ASEAN into anything that is not beneficial to ASEAN themselves. These are all some of the basic tenets of ASEAN. There are 10 members of ASEAN. We know that we would have studied in our international relations portion. Nevertheless, we will see what are all the 10 members. They are Brunei, Myanmar, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. So these 10 countries, some of them are monarchies. Thailand is a monarchy, right? Brunei is a monarchy. Then there are democracies also, like Vietnam. So they are in the spectrum, administrative spectrum. Still, they are performing well as a group because of this non-interference in the internal affairs. And this Asian region is also geopolitically significant because world's busiest sea lanes, that is the Malacca Strait, which is located below Singapore, and the South China Sea, which is located to the east of the Asian countries, they are geopolitically significant sea lanes of communication, and ASEAN is wedged between these sea lanes of communication. So that way also ASEAN becomes significant. Also, as a grouping, they are the 5th largest economy in the world, and they have a combined annual GDP of around $3.2 trillion, and they have 600 million strong population, which means it is also an attractive market. So ASEAN is a very powerful grouping in terms of the content of its economy, not so much as its political power. Then in 1992, Asian Free Trade Area was established. So the aim of this Asian Free Trade Area was to create a single market so that there is increase in trade and investments within members, and also there is ease of getting foreign investments into the Asian countries. As a result of this AFTA, that is the Asian Free Trade Area, tariffs on nearly 8,000 items were removed and businesses could access neighboring markets easily. So if a particular company in Vietnam wants to market its products in Laos, it is very easy to access the market. That was facilitated by Asian Free Trade Area. In 1997, there was Asian financial crisis, and in the wake of that, the Asian countries decided that we must stick together. We must further integrate the economies. So in 2003, ASEAN countries, they decided to establish ASEAN Economic Community. But this ASEAN Economic Community, it became a reality in 2015. And as a result of AEC, that is the ASEAN Economic Community, ASEAN became a single market community and production base to facilitate the free flow of goods, services, investment, capital and labor. Like how in India we can move capital, goods, services, investment, capital, labor easily. Similarly, between the ASEAN countries, that kind of free trade was made possible through the ASEAN Economic Community, AEC. Also, the ASEAN Regional Forum, which was convened in 1994, and in this ARF, there were 26 Asian Pacific states and EU. So, it was to foster a dialogue on political and security matters. So, ASEAN reached out to regional and global powers through the ASEAN Regional Forum. And as a conclusion of ASEAN Regional Forum, the East Asia Summit was created in 2005. And this East Asia Summit has even more broader agenda than the ASEAN Regional Forum, in which not only politics and security matters are discussed, all kinds of cooperation including maritime, environment, climate cooperation, they are also discussed. And India is part of the East Asia Summit. Also, ASEAN has trade agreements with several regional partners like Australia, China, India, Japan, New Zealand and South Korea. And in the end, the RCEP is a free trade area and it consists of ASEAN plus these countries excluding India. So, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. I'll write it here. RCEP means Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. So, this is a free trade area between ASEAN, Australia, New Zealand, China, Japan and South Korea. So, these countries are a part of the RCEP. India backed out of this because we wanted to protect our domestic industries. So, this much ASEAN has done in their own region as well as in terms of outreach to other economies, other jurisdictions. However, there is a problem. There are some concerns with ASEAN. That is, in Myanmar, there is the military junta government which imprisoned Aung San Suu Kyi. But this particular grouping was not able to curtail the activities of the military junta of Myanmar. Then, China's overgrowing dominance, China throwing around its military might on these countries, the ASEAN grouping is not able to contain that. In South China Sea region, there are multiple ASEAN countries which are accepting their sovereignty also, but China is claiming this region through the 9-dash line. But ASEAN has been ineffective in combating China with respect to the South China Sea issue. So these are all some criticisms of ASEAN. Thus we saw a holistic assessment of how ASEAN has grown, how ASEAN has been asserting itself, how successful ASEAN has been and what are the criticisms on ASEAN. That is the end of discussion. We'll see two previous year question. Momentum for Change Climate Neutral Now is an initiative launched by which of these international bodies? The answer is C, the UNFCCC Secretariat. Next question. Which one of the following statements correctly describe the meaning of legal tender money? The answer in this case is B. The money which is a creditor is under compulsion to accept in settlement of his claims. That is, if we see a rupee note, in that the Reserve Bank governor would have signed saying, I promise to pay the bearer a sum of so and so rupees. That is a legal tender money because it is backed by the Reserve Bank governor. And if I go to a shop and I settle whatever I purchased from that shop using this money, the shopkeeper cannot refuse to get this money and give me goods. That is legal tender money. Okay, so that's it for today's discussion. Follow us on all these social media platforms. Thank you. All the best. This is Indumati signing off.